Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Kay Bretz with us today. He's the founder of Turning Right. He's also an ultra runner. Did a record for sure, 260K in less than 24 hours as an ultra runner. So, Kay, welcome to the pod. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Charles. I'm a very passionate ultra runner. So I've represented Australia in 2019 at the World Championships for 24-hour running. Came 11th place there, so I'm taking it somewhat seriously. Really enjoy that, and have found a way to connect that with my passion in work as well. So I used to work for McKinsey and then in corporate in management roles, but set myself up as a founder of a company which now helps leaders and organizations really step change. So my passion, in short, is about diving into the deep end and then navigating the biggest challenges and seeing what comes out of that.
260K in 24 hours is pretty insane. How did you do that? Was it flat or was it like not
Yeah,
flat?
Yeah, so take the world champs. So the format of those world champs is you have 24 hours time to actually run, and it was a flat course. So you run a 1.5 kilometer course in loops. That's actually not as insane as it sounds. There's way worse. The qualifying race was a 400-meter loop. So running 400 meters for 24 hours, that's a little bit more of a mind game. So we're right in your sweet spot as well of just how do we train the mind, staying focused and resilient. And on that very flat course in those 24 hours at the World Champs to come 11th, I ran 259 kilometers. So we're talking 530 minutes per kilometer on average.
Which is insane. So, how did you prepare for that? What kind of challenges appeared in your face while you were doing that?
Yeah, so obviously there's the physical preparation. So, but that is one has to be to get to that level of performance. One has to just understand that the physical preparation is just one minute thing of everything. So yes, I was running a lot. I was running up to 200 kilometers a week. So in peak training weeks, and I included hills, I included speed, I included lots of long runs, I included night runs, like whatever. I always like to be relatively holistic there and see what will strengthen my body. But then the bigger challenges were dealing with the mind, because 24 hours of running continuously and under pressure in a way, the mind can wander and then sabotage the entire race, which has nothing to do with fitness. And so again, I like to simulate similar challenges. So I went just on a normal day to a track, a 400-meter track, and just ran for 6 hours. And I mean, that's not 24 hours, but 6 hours in training, going round and round and round in circles, and you pass the start finish line every 90 seconds or so. Yeah, it's pretty mind numbing. And knowing that you will do that for 24 hours in training, my mind at least, but I think it's very common, it then tries to extrapolate and say, like, after 6 hours of training, saying like, this was hard, this was really, really, really hard, how can I ever go for 24 hours? And I've learned to not believe my mind there and say, okay, this is part of the training, of just notice that I'm concerned, that I have a bit of fear there, and just don't believe it, and see what happens. And then obviously on race day, when you're tapered and when the excitement is there and when the race is full on and you have competition and everything is somehow live, yeah, after 6 hours you don't feel as bad as in training after 6 hours.
Interesting. And yeah, I've done that myself various times. Yeah, the loop thing is really messing up with your mind. I think it's yeah, ultimately it's a mind game, and you separate it into micro milestones. Not sure if you listen to music or to podcasts or audiobooks while you do it, but you try to distract the mind. It's not actually about controlling the mind and so forth and being like all positive, in my opinion, it's like really distracting it, right? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I like to have both in my toolbox. So I like the distracting methods, and I like the tuning in method. So exactly the opposite, because I find distracting is working mid to short term. So absolutely, when you have a rough patch and somehow find a different thing to focus on. So in a way to distract it, obviously that can help. And at the same time, distracting it for 24 hours is just too long. So then part of my training was somewhat tuning into the discomfort and trying to sit with the discomfort and just saying, okay, this is discomfort. Let's not look away. Let's look into it, right into the eye of the hurricane, and just somehow dissect it a little bit of saying, yeah, I'm I'm agitated. What does that mean? Where do I feel that? And then one notices typically, so it's basically a kind of a meditative technique. One notices that it's not as bad as it seems. It's not. It's not. I don't have to give in to the discomfort if it's. It's way easier to give in if it's unconscious discomfort. If it's just somewhere and one just feels not good. Whereas when one notices, I've got a tight belly, and then I try to really, really investigate, what does a tight belly mean? Is it more smooth or is it more round? Is it hot or is it cold? Is it like, what color does it have? And that sounds a bit weird, but it's like in your imagination, everything, if you really investigate, and then when you do that, it tends to ease off a little bit. And then so that's the tuning in method. So I like to do both.
And tuning in, you also have like looking at yourself from a third perspective, sort of, and watching your posture, your cadence, and all of that. Do you also focus on your technique, or is that subconscious at this point?
Now that you're spot on. It's obviously normally it's unconscious, but it's a good thing to what I like to say is step onto the balcony and look at you running. And the biggest thing I've noticed is getting rhythm. So when I'm in a bad spot, the first thing that goes is the rhythm. So it's not the cadence, it's slumped over, it's somehow not smooth. And so I've noticed I can't really force myself to speed up in that kind of spot. So when I'm getting slower and getting things are somewhat degrading, if I tell myself speed up, Kai, it doesn't really work, because it's like then I'm like a little child throwing a tantrum and saying, well, I can't. But what I can do is saying get rhythm going, because rhythm is somehow not a performance thing. It's more of a, as you say, it's a technique, it's a process. And when the rhythm is back on, the mind tends to be calmer.
Right. And tell me about some of your most challenging events and moments, and how you
Mm.
actually go over them during races when everything goes wrong. You're at the bottom of the barrel. Like, what's your tip to get over that? You mentioned two techniques, but I need like a specific example of some of your toughest race, and the challenges you surmounted.
Yes, so we might go into a few if we have the time. Let's see. So the first one is it was
Yeah.
my first big ultra. So I signed up again. I went into the deep end. So I signed up to. It was similar. It was at the time the Australian version of the Marathon des Sables. So it's a 250-kilometer stage race in the Australian outback in the middle of in the middle of the desert. And on day 2 or 3, so you run a marathon every day, and then on day 5 you somehow run a double marathon. So it somehow adds up, and I was a novice. That was 2015, exactly 10 years ago. And obviously day one, still everything is fine. I actually got a course record on day one. Everybody was laughing at me saying, well, mate, you've gone out far too fast. And on day two, well, I had to prove that I hadn't gone out too fast. And after like half an hour, 60 minutes, I felt how heavy my legs were. So I was not in a good physical position, mental position, and obviously in terms of the dynamics, there was quite a lot of pressure because everybody was looking at me. I was saying, yeah, well, you probably overpaced the previous day. And I noticed my legs getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and me slowing down. And I somehow stayed calm. So I was back on that balcony, just looking at myself and stayed mentally calm. And then the thing which happened in my mind was I had some intuition coming up. And what was going through my mind was saying, stay calm, Kai. You're just growing desert legs. So, and I didn't even know what desert legs are, but it somehow made sense to me of saying, it's like I'm adjusting to this environment. Running on sand is nothing I normally do. And my body is adjusting to it. Give yourself half an hour, buy yourself time, and everything will be fine. And that's exactly what happened. So buying yourself time and don't judging too early and saying extrapolating. So don't extrapolate is probably the strategy, because just because stuff is degrading at any point in time, it doesn't mean that it can't come back instantly. And that's what happened. And then, long story short, on that day, I got another course record for that section. So for that day. That would be one example. I can go into as many as you would like to, but
let's go with a couple more.
Yeah, so probably the biggest challenge I've done was a 200-mile race. That was 350 kilometers at the time. Again, it was in Australia through quite sandy along the coastline in Western Australia. Had lots of snakes there, so there were lots of challenges. And it was my first big race. I'd signed up for a 240-kilometer race, was fit for that. The race got cancelled, and the alternative was a 350-kilometer race. So it was crazy in its own right. And 35 degrees, and you get the picture. And I was going well. I was in second, third position for most of the time. And so I got through the first night, and that was okay. I got into the second afternoon, and I was exhausted and tired and grumpy and questioning obviously everything I was doing. And then in the second night, still sleep deprived. I couldn't sleep. I wanted to do a little bit of micro sleep here and there. I couldn't sleep. And after 40 hours, everything fell apart. It's there was a section of 3 kilometers which took me, I think, 2 hours. So I was in bad shape, really bad shape, and I was shivering. I couldn't see straight. I was close to hallucinating. And what my support crew, so you have a pacer by then, so at least you're not on your own. It's a safety measure, obviously. He somehow dragged me to the next checkpoint, and made me lie down. He just said, well, you can't go on like this. It's just lie down for an hour, which you're allowed to do. If you can't sleep, you can't sleep, but you're not getting up for an hour. And so I was somewhat semi hallucinating, and then I must have drifted off. And when I got up, so they woke me up again after an hour. When I woke up, everything had changed. I was wondering, well, I hadn't really done anything, but I'd disconnected, which you can't do in a 100-meter race. I get it. I mean, it's a 200-mile race, you can disconnect. And I went out, tested my legs, and I was running. So I was really running. And again, similarly, in terms of what has happened there, it was like, I think that was a moment of surrendering. I was so in my head of trying to control the race, to dissect, to go through the numbers of how many hours am I running, what's the next checkpoint. So I tried to really do all the analytical stuff, which can work really well in shorter distances. I like to do that in marathons, and it's okay. But it's very exhausting to think all the time. And what had happened in that micro sleep there was I had surrendered, and I was calm. My shoulders had probably dropped, and I was just running. I was in the moment, and I was fully in tune with the environment. So a little bit later, during the day, so that was then the third day, I suddenly stopped on the trail intuitively. I stopped. It was a narrow trail, and there was a stick in front of me. And I asked my pacer, I said, what's that stick? And pacer said, well, it's a stick. And I said, no. It looks like a snake. Well, it looked like a stick, but I said, it's a snake. So we tested and came to the conclusion it was a dead snake, wanted to move it off the trail. And when we tried to move it, it came to life. It absolutely came up, hissed at us. And I just, obviously we stayed safe. We backed off and then the snake went. But it's the thing where you say after more than, that was 60 hours in or 50 hours into running with in total probably 60 minutes of sleep, so completely sleep deprived, I was in tune with the environment and picked up things I would never pick up when I'm just in my rational brain. And that is a very beautiful spot to be. And then yeah, wrapped it up in the third night, 68 hours of running, second place, which I was very happy with. But it was not about the place, it was not about the time, it was just a challenge which was way beyond what I thought could be done. And last comment, which was just very interesting, was the body follows whatever the mind wants it to do when you're focused. So I could have kept on running. Don't get me wrong, I was very happy to see the finish line, but I could have kept on running. I got to the finish line, sat down, and I couldn't even walk to the car anymore. The mind knew we're done, and the body was absolutely, it switched off, and there was no chance of switching it back on again. So that was just very interesting observation of how the mind and body works in tandem.
Yeah, and we see that in the Olympics as well, right? Like after the marathon is done, a bunch like collapse at the finish line, and they can't even walk. They need people to carry them through because they're doing like crazy paces, like 6 minutes per mile or something like that. Yeah, it's fascinating. Did you ever not finish a race? Did you ever get the DNF?
Yes, I have. The one
How
one
did you
I'm
deal with
actually
that?
really proud. Yes, one I'm actually really proud of because it was back to that 240-kilometer race I've mentioned before, and it's called Coast to Coast. It's really iconic here in Australia. You start at the beach physically, and you go to the highest mountain of the continent, which is Mount Kosciuszko. And then, so I got to Charlotte's Pass, which is the end of the road. That is in miles, it's probably 6, 7 miles from the finish line, might be 8 miles from the finish line. You just have to go 300 meters up to the summit and back. It's not a difficult path. Anybody can do it if you're in good shape. And I wasn't in good shape, so I'd for the previous 6 hours somehow gotten to that point. But then you're in alpine surroundings, and you're in a way it's not car accessible anymore. And we got there at sunrise, and typically it's a 2.5, 3 hour push at that end, at that stage. And I was very determined to get there, but the wind had picked up to crazy speeds. It must have been sub-zero temperatures in terms of Celsius. So it's probably the felt like temperature was 20 Fahrenheit, minus something Celsius. And my crew looked at me and said, we've you might be in real danger up on that mountain. I mean, we're going up, it's cold. Yes, you've got pacers who are with you, but there's no instant, they can't really get you down the mountain. And I agreed. I said, yeah, it's probably 50-50 chance. And then very proudly, we jointly made the decision saying for 50-50 chance, we're not pushing it because it becomes dangerous. I want to run more ultras than that one. And we pulled out, and it was painful, and it was very liberating to know that I made probably a very sane decision while being in an environment and in somehow a sport which does lots of crazy stuff. There's a certain level of sanity which keeps us safe. So yeah, that was one example.
And how big was the mountain? How much kilometers were you gonna spend in there? What was your stage prior to getting to that mountain?
So it's up to the mountain in kilometers, it's 222, and it's 18. So it's 9 up, 9 down. And then in those nine
Whoa.
up, you do so it's just you are very exposed. It's the highest mountain of the continent. It's not a high mountain in other continents, but it has you have to traverse some snow. a little bit, and that's in summer here. So you get into rough terrain, and the weather was foul. It was windy, and we expected storms. And the most painful part was that, in a way, I withdrew from the race and had a DNF at a stage, so at that kind of pass, where 6 hours later they shortened the race to that being the finish line. So I basically was too fast to finish the race. Had I been at the same stage 6 hours later, I would have finished the race officially. That messed with my head a little bit. But then you say, yeah, that's sports. It's sometimes it doesn't sound right, and that's sports, and it's just a number. And proudly, yeah, I got to it a little bit too early, and sometimes you get punished for being too fast, and that's what happened to me, and deal with it.
Yeah, so pretty positive mentality. You're sort of nice with yourself. What's next for you? What do you want to achieve in the upcoming years?
I don't know this year in terms of race. I had a really, really big year last year, so I somewhat take a little bit of a step back and recovery to then go again. I don't know what that will look like. Last year I finished a race where in 6 years of existence I was only the second finisher. So that was a big one where which had 12,000 meters of elevation in it. I don't know what the next one is, but I think it will be trail. I really love trail rather than doing too much road racing. So something like that, and long. I do like long races.
Interesting. Well, I'll let you go to your morning run, Kai. Where can people find out more about you?
Easiest is going on turninglight.com. So turning and then right like the direction, RIGHT.com. I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn under my name. You'll find me. And my homepage is the easiest one to find everything else about me.
So that was Kai and Charles for another